Okay, so hello everybody. Hello, Dr. King. Welcome to our book group discussion, Other People's Words. We are Louis, Ivonette, Ruth, Mayra, Daniel, and Daniel. So we are going just to discuss about how literacy functions as a dynamic social and cultural experience. Daniel is going to handle our time management, so he's going to just tell us when to move during our presentation. So we think that literacy is a beautiful process that it starts at home, it starts yes in the family, and it goes generation after generation. So we think that the main thesis of the book is that literacy is a dynamic experience rather than an isolated process. Literacy develops through authentic and meaningful social and cultural experiences, being supported by home and school. So, now, in my personal opinion, this book reminds me that school should focus in addressing, identifying, reading and writing difficulties of our multilingual learners more than promoting them to the next level. So that is something that should be done first in the schools. So, Louis, what do you think?
I completely agree with your point, Internet. Why? Because identifying an literacy difficulties early is important, but it's equally important to understand where those difficulties come from. I like to add that one of the main ideas of the book is that literacy practices are passed from one generation to another, right? This idea supports that supports our thesis that literacy is a dynamic experience shaped by social and cultural experiences. In the introduction, in the page number 7, the authors ask, how could Donnie and Timmy learn to read and write when neither of their parents did? What roles, if any, did parents' literacy have to play in Donnie's difficulties in school? These questions show that children's literacy is strongly influenced by their family's beliefs and literacy practices across generations. Then, in chapters 3 and 4, yes, we see this generational cycle begins to change as Donny's mother starts to develop her own literacy and recognize value of reading and writing. Donny's attitude also begins to change. I don't know if you remember that. This shows that
Louis,
literacy
10
practices,
seconds.
thank you, can be transformed from one generation to the next. I believe that the author achieves her purpose because she demonstrates that literacy is learned not only at school, but also through family experience.
Building on what Louis just mentioned, the book reminds us that teachers should understand students' cultural backgrounds before making assumptions about their abilities. And Gates encourages educators to recognize the literacy experiences children bring from home instead of viewing differences as deficits. And I think this message is especially relevant in TESOL today.
Hmm. Yes.
It's true, completely true. Another important point or purpose for this book, I think, is to prove that literacy is influenced for or by everyday life and access to meaningful print rather than just develop it only through formal schooling.
Hmm.
Um, around the book,
Yes.
Percival Gates supports this claim through the research with Jenny, an adult learner, right? Showing that literacy practices are closely connected to our social and cultural environments. Let's say that learners need meaningful opportunities to practice reading and writing just to read, for example, a menu at a restaurant or let's say a schedule at a bus station, right?
Hmm.
And if we see it in a TESOL context, we'll say that learners should be reading, for example, apartment or job posting. These are like real um, literacy practices that have a real purpose in our everyday life.
Hmm.
So I don't know, what do you think, Daniel?
So in my case, I think that this book paves a way to troubleshoot literacy difficulties by making a school system aware of how deep their cultural background can influence in their development of the second language. So I would say that the book doesn't blame families because of their children lack of knowledge. On the contrary, the author points out that the educational system must be aware of a student's cultural background every single time.
Mhm.
Completely
Yes.
agree.
Okay, so let's go and let's talk about the summary of the book.
Okay, I would like to begin by talking about the first part of the book. One of the most important ideas in the first three chapters is that Gates changes the way we think about literacy. Instead of asking why Donnie struggles with reading, she asks what kind of literacy experiences Donnie had before entering school. And this shift is important because it moves the focus away from blaming the child and toward understanding the social and cultural context in which literacy develops.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Another idea that the first chapters introduces that literacy is not only like an individual skill, learning how to decode or how to write sentences. It is a social practice connected to people's daily experiences, communities, and written language, and also how to interact with it. Something that stood out from this chapter is that Jenny was someone who didn't lack intelligence or she wasn't able to learn how to read and write, but she didn't have the opportunity to connect with the environment or have the environment with resources that allow her to create this or to learn these skills, for example. And overall, the first chapters, we can say that the main argument is that literacy is influenced by everyday experiences and meaningful print, as I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what you say about the importance of knowing our students' background, right? Especially their family experiences with literacy. It's completely different, guys, to teach a student who has many literacy experiences at home than a student that have very few. I think that Donnie's story is a good example of this. Another important idea, yes, from this book is that students cannot learn reading and writing well if they only practice isolated skills, right? As you mentioned before, Ruth. First, they need to understand why reading and writing are important in their everyday lives, like going to the restaurant, going to a museum, or reading in a cell phone. But they need to know that this is very important for them. We need to create a necessity for them, right? Porcel Gates explains that Donnie was not ready to learn through traditional phonics or decoding because he had very little experience with print, right? Instead, he first needed mental literacy experiences in his real life. This idea surprised me, guys, because I used to think that students should first learn phonics and decoding step by step before doing a real reading and writing. However, the chapter helped me understand that literacy does not develop in such a linear way. I think this book helped us better understand literacy development of diverse learners because every student comes to the school with a different literacy experiences and backgrounds. As teacher, we should connect literacy instruction to students' backgrounds and everyday lives instead of teaching only isolated skills. I don't know, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Louis, I agree with you. So chapter 5 is very meaningful because of that and the strategies that is giving us, yes, as ESL or dual language teachers, because I really enjoy the strategy that the author was working with Donnie. I do that with my newcomers. So just take their life experiences, put them in the print. So I just do exactly the same. So write their own words. I use my document camera, and then they are able to identify their words in the print form. So they understand and they appreciate the power of speech, that how powerful is the speech when you just put it in the written form. So that was a strategy, and I enjoyed chapter 5 because of that. Also because of the use of authentic material, so especially with Jenny, how to help her live her mom role in a more conscious way. So she was able to read what she was buying in the grocery store. She was able to read their medicine at home. So the medicine bottle. So she was able to do many things that she didn't do before. She was also learning how to read storybooks. So in that way, she changed the dynamic with Donnie at home, chapter 6. So they create new reading habits, and they are just breaking a generational, I would say, cycle of illiteracy. Yes. So now let's
That's true.
go with the next part, chapter 7, 8, and
So
9.
in the chapters 7 to 9, I will say that the author demonstrated that learners make meaningful progress when they engage with real text for real purposes, such as letters, stories, environmental print, and functional documents, rather than relying on worksheets or isolated phonic drills. So in these units, I think that the author highlights literacy develops through participation in authentic social interactions, and that children from homes with limited print exposure are not deficient. They simply lack of opportunities to experience genuine literacy event. So an example I would say that Donnie's case powerfully illustrates this idea. He shows almost no growth when confined to phonics worksheet, but once he begins reading real books, creating real stories, and producing meaningful writing, his literacy development accelerates rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true.
Yes.
That's when
Yes,
it comes to the
yes.
fact that says that authentic literacy practices is
Mm-hmm.
like it gives the real purpose, like the purpose in
Uh-huh.
real life, how to use it. And that's when people understand
Mm-hmm.
how important is literacy.
Fulfilling real life needs. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's go and let's talk about the strengths of the book. Well, I will share my point about this. So I just really enjoyed the whole book because I think the book, what we just said, is connecting us to real life experiences, and that's what we need to do with our students. So connect and value, give their appropriate recognition to their prior knowledge, their previous experiences, and this is what the book is illustrating. Also, is recognizing diversity, cultural background, and home realities. So, as an ESL teacher, so that is what I try to do every single day, just to get into the context where my students are coming from, just to be able to fulfill their needs, linguistic needs, and literacy needs, and why not get into get closer to their families and maybe try to change their reality just to help them to succeed in this new environment and I don't know, feeling more comfortable because it's a very hard type of process. Daniel, what do you think?
I will point out the fact that the author says about the use of authentic materials, because the way students interact with real text, such as stories, letters, environmental print, and functional documents, rather than worksheets, may define their progress. So it reflects a sociocultural view of literacy where reading and writing immerse through real life use and participation in meaningful social interactions. So the book also challenges the deficit perspective by emphasizing equity in literacy access, arguing that children from low-print homes do not have enough material to start.
Mhm.
Okay, another strength of the book is that it values students' prior knowledge and cultural backgrounds. Instead of focusing on what children lack, the author encourages teachers to build on the literacy experiences that students already they bring from home.
Really interesting that you mentioned home. Uh, Another strength from the book is that that connection that the person engaged makes between the literacy practices at home and the school success the students have. I don't know if you remember that reading that we had at the beginning of this course by Proud and the Squid, I think it was the name, that had to do with the early literacy, how this influences in students' life. So
Yeah.
this part also, that's one of the strengths of the book because it mentions that beginning through everyday interactions with prints, meaningful prints, such as reading a book for them or reading, even reading the newspapers or writing leads, fill out forms, so they can begin to understand that literacy has a purpose in real life. So with these experiences, children develop vocabulary, background knowledge, confidence when they encounter into this academic literacy at school. So as teachers, I think that we need to think also in those students that didn't have the knowledge back at home. We need to think of activities in order to promote the literacy by reading aloud or share readings in order to help them succeed, I'm sorry, in this part.
That's
So
right.
that's one strength that I really liked about the book too.
Yes.
Yes, Ruth, I think that your point is super important because I agree with this point about the connection between literacy practicing at home and school success. It reminds us that literacy share a responsibility between families and school all the time. I also want to highlight the formative assessment process that Purcell is used with Donnie and Janet. I really like Jenny. I don't know if you remember Jenny's journals because the teacher, did not only evaluate if she could read or write. Yes, she just was looking at the process, looking at the motivation, and making notes about her process. She observed Jenny's progress all the time, motivation and learning process. Another example is when Donis invented spelling. Do you remember that? And the activity with the book, Where the Will Things Are, when Donis changed the name of the main character and he started using his brother's name. I think that these activities, the teacher continuously observe and document this process. This is formative assessment. I think that this is a great example of formative assessment because instead of using only standardized tests that of course they are important, the teacher uses meaningful and culturally relevant literacy experiences to understand each student's learning. The goal was not
10
just
seconds.
give a grade, but to understand the student's progress and use that information to plan the next steps in instruction. I would like to use this approach with my multilingual students.
Yes.
That would be great.
Yes. Okay, now let's talk about the weaknesses of the book.
I would like to start with this.
Okay.
One of the weaknesses of the book is that it doesn't discuss multilingual learners or bilingual families, right? The study focuses on Donnie and his mother, who are native English speakers from Appalachian region of Kentucky. Although their social and literacy experiences are very different from many other American families, I think it will have been included to another case study with a family from a different cultural and linguistic background. For example, it will be interesting to see how these literacy practices work with immigrant families or Hispanic families who are learning English while also maintaining their home language. Their experiences with literacy may be even more complex because they are developing literacy in a new language and adapting to a new culture. Adding this type of case will make the book more relevant for today's classrooms and help teachers better
10
understand
seconds.
how to support multilingual learners from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds.
Exactly. Something similar to what you mentioned, Luby, adding to that or building on that point, another weakness could be that this research, only focus on one context and one participant experience. So even though Portia Gates provide specifically or details powerful and analysis on Jenny's literacy background, these findings, do not represent the experience of all individuals who experience the same case with literacy, right? With low literacy in this case. So we need to understand that literacy sometimes develops or is influenced by different factors such as socioeconomic conditions, culture, language, educational opportunities, and community resources as well. So different population may experience different challenges and develop maybe different relationship with literacy. However, I don't think this limitation could reduce the importance of the research.
Right. Okay, also the book is very insightful. I think it could be more practical examples or teaching strategies to help educators apply its ideas in every classrooms.
That is true.
Yes,
Mhm.
right.
So one important weakness of this book, I will say that the author almost entirely on LA reading and writing, focuses almost entirely on ELA reading and writing, without addressing how authentic literacy practices apply across other content areas or language domains, which limit its usefulness for TESOL educators working in more diverse instructional contexts. So while the ethnographic examples powerfully illustrate how authentic materials support early literacy, the book doesn't explore how learners engage with authentic texts in subjects like science, math, or social studies, nor does it address listening, speaking, or multimodal communication domains that are essential for multilingual learners.
Yes, Daniel, I totally agree with you. So, yes, if it should have been interesting just to see how other content areas would work with these specific strategies, not only reading and writing, but also what about the other language skills. However, it's very good to keep in mind and recognize that the book gave us very great strategies to keep working on our processes with our kids. So the approach, language experience approach, just writing the is our students' words. So that is very useful and effective. Also the use of authentic material. So that is also wonderful just to contextualize what we need to work with our students, just to let them see the importance, the need of learning, because sometimes that is an inconvenience with our learners. They are not really interested in learning. So what for? So I don't want, I'm tired, I'm bored. So that's like a situation that we need to deal with. But I agree with you, Daniel. Thank you. And I think that those are like the main weaknesses of the book, because like I said before, this book is a very nice like advice package combo for us, just to keep in mind many things that we live in our everyday life with our multilingual learners. So what if we go to our personal professional connection? So yes, now we get the inspiration to share our situations here. So Louis,
Well,
would you like? Yes, go ahead.
yes, thank you. I would like to start with this discussion talking about my son. I want to speak as a teacher. I would like to speak as a mother, yes, with a kid who arrived in United States and who didn't know how to speak and write in English maybe 3 years ago. This would make me think about my son, yes, during the first 2 years, 3 years, in a dual language program, he made good progress in the first 2 years, in English, and did not seem to fall behind academically. However, when we start middle school, his transition was much more difficult. This summer, guys, I want to tell you, we decided that he will continue his education in Colombia while I finish the master degree at my participant learning program. When he took the admission test for a school in Colombia here, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was super surprised by the results, guys. He scored much lower than we expect in math, science, Spanish, and English. Until that moment, I had never received clear information that he needed this level of academic support during the middle school. So
10
this
seconds.
experience made me think about Donnie's story. The book reminds us that we cannot make assumptions about students' learning based on their grade level. We need to understand their literacy background, monitor their progress through the formative assessment, and maintain a strong communication with family. As a teacher and as a mother, this book reminds me that multilingual learners and newcomer students need equitable support, differentiated instruction, and continuous communication between school and families. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Well, I am a kindergarten teacher, so I work with immigrant students, and this book reminds me that every child comes to school with valuable literacy experiences, and it reinforces the importance of getting to know their families and building on the strengths they already bring to the classroom. So it's something that I'm going to keep from now on.
I think
Mhm.
that we can agree that while reading this book, a lot of situations came to our minds. In my case, I'm a second grader. I work with dual language as well. But I had a specific or particular case here. A second grader came to my classroom without reading. He didn't know how to read in his first language, which was English in this part. It was like the opposite. He was trying to learn Spanish, but he didn't know how to read in English. So he struggled a lot with letter recognition, phonemic awareness, everything in English. So we were struggling with the same in Spanish as well. Even though he had his IRPs, I would call them like support, like interventions throughout the year and extra
Mhm.
support. Sadly, he finished second grade and he couldn't reach to read grade level in M class. But something interesting that we found out throughout the year is like in one of the parent teacher conferences, we
Mhm.
found out that the parents didn't know how to read either. So when I was
Oh,
reading this book, I was like, wow.
Mhm.
Even though this
Mhm.
book was written like what, a long time ago, 30 years ago, I don't know how long, I don't remember the specific year, but it's amazing to see that we still have some patterns that
Mhm.
the book is telling us
maybe.
about. And it's
Yes.
kind of sad to see that
And
because
second,
at the beginning of the year, the kid was so excited about learning and he was trying his best. But it's interesting how the comments at home sometimes, or the support that he didn't see at home because the parents weren't able to support him, were affecting his attitude at the end of the year as well. So
Oh.
it's kind of sad to see this kind of patterns
Mhm.
nowadays. Sadly, he's going to third grade with these literacy gaps, but he will try his
Mhm.
best, I know, and we will try to keep working on these kind of cases.
Yes.
so in my case, I would like to share that I have a student who's from Egypt, so she didn't understand how to write any kind of character because she has to learn the whole alphabet. So she didn't understand a character. It was really difficult to work with her, but sometimes she made her way through by mimicking. So I could understand when she was just trying to express something funny, a funny fact. I will say that the first word that she said was candy because I was trying to reward her when she was doing a good job. I was trying to give her a candy. So I think that it motivated her to keep doing it.
Yes. Oh, well, I would like to share with you an experience. Well, I have many experiences, but now that Ruth, you were talking about that, and Daniel, about your experiences, I would like to share about a kindergartner that I had that last school year, newcomer, because he was born in not Mexico, I think it was Honduras, yes. And he came just completely with no literacy in Spanish. So he speaks Spanish, but he didn't know because he's a kindergartner, and he was so motivated and he was so happy and he enjoyed it and he was very active in the classroom. So whatever activity we were doing, he was just encouraging the other kids, and I was explaining something, and I was calling one by one, and he was just doing, let's see, Sophie, Sophie. He was always doing those things. And by the end of the year, he was the first student with the highest scores in kindergarten. He was always helping his teacher. His mom didn't speak any English, so I don't know if she knows how to write Spanish or reading, maybe very, very low level, but he was teaching them at home. So he was teaching what he was learning in school, he was teaching at home. And their parents were so encouraged. They were so happy, and they were just giving me all the compliments. Ah, yes, well, thank you for motivating our kid. And so it's just that, like the opposite of what we normally see, because sometimes parents, they don't want to, they feel maybe
Mhm.
embarrassed and they don't want that people know that they don't know how to read or write in
Exactly.
Spanish. But this little one, he's changing his whole family dynamic, and he has an energy. He's so amazing. So I think he will be out of the ESL program soon because he's a
Oh,
newcomer,
It's
but now
interesting.
it's like it's not a newcomer anymore. So this book helped me to remember all those different cases with newcomers and my ESL students. So I really enjoyed it. And oh well,
And
yeah, I don't know.
that's a proof that family influences a lot, not only with the
Yes,
literacy skills,
yes.
but also the emotional part. Because
Emotional
I
part.
I guess that the family was supporting him as well, like as well as he was
Mm-hmm.
improving, the family was telling me things. So, and I think
Yes.
that's the opposite that happened with my student in this case. Like he didn't feel
Uh-huh.
that, and it was sad
Yes.
to see because parents were like, "We don't know how to help him. We don't know how to read.
Mm.
He won't do the
No.
homework." So we were trying to encourage them, like to see he's doing some progress with letter recognition, but
Yes.
It's kind of hard, but it's amazing to see how the family plays an important role in this case, right?
Yes, it's a fundamental role. Yes. So let's take a look at this picture
We
that
have
we
30
have.
seconds to finish the whole video.
Yes. Okay.
Mm.
Yes. So let's take a look at
It's
this. So
done.
how we can just change our, I don't know, generational situation with the right guidance, with the right, I don't know, advice, emotional support, like what you were saying, and we can just make them succeed. Not only little ones, but whole families can do that.
Exactly.
That's true.
So
Okay, guys.
yes. So
That's
that's
Thank
all
you so much.
for now, right? Yes.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, and
Thank you.
let's
Thank you so
let's
much.
stop it. So thank you, thank you.